This is the first part of a current Crotech blue sword build. I'm going to introduce you to the materials that will be needed. First, all Dagorhir weapon making almost. This stuff right here is Ozark Trail camping pad, blue foam we call it. You can get it at Walmart for about $7. Now for the cores, we're going to be using 3/8" fiberglass fence posts from Tractor Supply. They're about $2. I think I paid $3 for both of these, so you know, something like $1.50, something like that. This foam here is anti-fatigue mat, which is bought for the best price at Harbor Freight for about $8 for, I think it's 5 pieces. That's going to be that's going to wrap our core. That's going to be our box. Okay. Also, you're going to need a Sharpie or some sort of a marking device and a straight edge. I like to use this guy here, but any long straight edge like a yardstick, you know, that's what you need. This is going to be our binder. This is our adhesive, DAP, Weldwood contact cement. Don't get the gel. Not that I'm saying it doesn't work, but I haven't used it much, and everybody knows that this stuff does work. This is the liquid stuff. A big can like this is about $30, but you can get a smaller can for around $10. It's plenty to do this build and still have plenty left over. Now for your tape, 2 kinds of tape are needed. You're going to need bat tape. This you can find it at Walmart sometimes, but I get it at Academy. You can also find it at places like Lowe's, and they call it friction tape. But you got to be careful because they got some that's kind of greasy, but you want the stuff that's just dry cloth on the outside and the adhesive on the underside. This is kind of hard to come by sometimes. This is strapping tape. If you'll notice the lines in it, that's what makes it strapping tape. It's reinforced with fiberglass strips in there. You find this in the office supply section at Walmart typically. And that's all for our materials. Now you're going to need some sort of a cutting device, a very sharp knife, like I use a fillet knife sometimes, and something to sharpen it with if you're going that route. Also, I think the best that we found so far for cutting foam is this electric fillet knife. They're about $14. Also pick them up at Walmart or just any box store like that. Other than that, for making the fries, I'm using a makeshift router table. So we've got a router under here, the bit stuck up here, just a piece of wood here as a guide that's anchored at one end. But you can also do this part with a Dremel tool with a grinding barrel bit, which is a little more tedious but absolutely possible. What you want to do is be able to grind out half of the width of this in a circular pattern, half the width of this into these fries, which we'll get to in a little while. But that's the materials. That's all you're going to need for a blue sword build, and this is plenty to build several swords. Okay, we'll get on to the fry making in just a few minutes.
Ready.
Okay, so the first thing we're going to do is work on our fries. These are the part that actually wrap the core, and then you build from there. So what I've done here is just make a straight edge line, trying to cut off these edges here because they're useless to us. So you just lay out your straight edge, saving as much foam as possible. Just grab your little line with your Sharpie. And I'm going to show you here how I do it with this knife for one of them. Then I'm going to move on to the electric knife because it's faster, and I've got a few of these to do. Get you a nice sharp fillet knife if you like. Some people use a razor blade. If you do use a razor blade or a box cutter, it's going to dull down fast, so get yourself plenty of blades to go with it. Okay, and I'll take this here. I'll lay my knife not up like this, but flat down on it so you can have as much contact with the blade surface with the line as possible. And you're going to go one even stroke, not applying a lot of pressure. It'll take more than one stroke, but keeping your knife in the middle of your line. Like so. That cut it down almost, see it cut it down most of the way in most parts. Alright, you take one more swipe with it. Stay into your line. There you go, that's trimmed off. Now our measurement here is going to be 1 1/4 inches. This is going to be the width of your blade. Move it down a little bit. Okay, so we mark in here at 1 1/4 inches. Put a little dot. 1 1/4 inches down on this end. Just a little dot. All right. Take our straight edge. Pull our trash out of the way. Take our straight edge. Line up those 2 dots where they're right on the edges here and here. Okay. We want to get this as precise as possible because it's going to matter when we start routering out our channel for our fries, for our core. Get line there. Same thing. Go ahead and hit it again if you can. You got the tools to do it with. Keep it sharp. It's much easier and safer. Again, blade surface almost flat, as flat as you can get it. A little bit of downward pressure, not much. Keeping it straight to the line. Good lighting is very important for this. If you can't see it, you can't cut it. One more swipe of this guy. All right. Then we have one piece. All right. You're gonna do it one more time. That's basically what you do. And I'm gonna go ahead and cut up all of these. I like to show you again how I do it. I'll do it with the electric fillet knife after I get the cord out here and everything. Just come back then. Okay, once again we're going to mark this at 1 1/4 inches. Just to reiterate, both sides, squaring it up on the edges. 1 1/4 inches, 2 dots. Take your straight edge, connect the 2 dots, like so. Make your line. This time we're going to use the electric fillet knife. Now the electric fillet knife is a little different. You don't want to keep it flat down because it works more like a jigsaw. Another fry. Okay, so we're going to make all these into fries, and then we'll get back to you whenever it's time to start routering them out. Okay, so as I said before, we've got these fries. I cut enough for 3 swords, which it takes about two of these fries for each sword. So I cut enough for 3 swords, and these are 1 1/4 inches thick. So we want to make the channel at 5/8, which is half of 1 1/4. So I set this router bit, which is a 1/4 inch half round bit, at the depth of 1/4, or let's say I've got a 3/8 inch, whatever 3/8 is, half of that, the depth. Not doing math right now. I guess that would be 3/16. So I've set the depth so that it would be 3/16 deep, and it's going to make me a channel right down the center here, which is set 5/8 from here. So you look right here. I made the mark. The center bit is going to hit right at the 5/8 mark. It's going to carve me a channel right out of there. Okay, so we're going to do that. It's going to get a little loud for a minute, and I'll show you how these are done. Apply a little bit of pressure here, not too much. If you push down too far, that thing's going to eat your fingers up. So it is kind of dangerous working with this. It is a power tool. Said there is another option. You can use a Dremel tool with a grinding barrel bit on it, but I prefer to do it this way. It's a lot faster, especially if you have more than one to do. All right, so let's get that started.
Years from now, my people will be forced to live in mobile homes on reservations. Your people will wear cardigans and drink highballs. We will sell our bracelets by the roadside. You will play golf and enjoy hot hors d'oeuvres. My people will have pain and degradation. Your people will have stick shifts. The gods of my tribe have spoken. They have said, do not trust the pilgrims. And for all these reasons, I've decided to scalp you and burn your village to the ground.
Of American Indians today.
So as you can see here, that's one that first one I did where it kind of jumped off when I got it hung right here, and that's what happens. Now I'm going to fill that in with a little piece of blue foam or maybe a little piece of this 4-pound, and it should be solid, or I may just toss it and scrap it and just make another one, which is probably what I'll do. This is what we're actually looking for, a nice clean channel right there. Nice clean channel, and two of these are going to fit together over the core like this. So this is going to be your box. This is how it starts. These are going to fit together over the core like that. Okay, so I'm going to cut out the rest of these, and then we'll get to the next step in just a few minutes, which will be wrapping this in tape. Alright, so we've got all of our fries cut here. I've got a 6 cut. It takes about 2 for each sword. So these are going to go around this core. Alright, so this is 3/8 inch fiberglass fence post rod that you get from Harbor Freight. That's not right, it's not Harbor Freight. Get it from Tractor Supply. About $1.50. You got to understand, when you invest in these things, you get a lot out of it. Like, this is enough for 3 swords out of this 4-pound foam here. But you still got, you have 4 other pieces. This one's partially used, but you have 4 other pieces of this left plus this half piece. So when you invest in these things and you have a lot left over, so you can make a lot of swords out of this, a lot of equipment. This blue foam, it doesn't even take half of this to make, or it takes maybe that much of it to make 1 sword. It doesn't take much at all. So like I said, the initial investment's about 30-40 bucks, but you have a lot left to do other things with. Make more swords, make daggers, a glaive if you wish, whatever you like. Alright, so back to the core. 3/8 inch fiberglass fence post rod from Tractor Supply, $1.50. This is bat tape. This I get from sporting goods stores. It's about $3 a roll, which is kind of expensive considering how much of it I use. But for this project, it should take less than this roll. Alright, which is $3. I said that. First thing we want to do is we want to cover these edges right here. Sometimes I grind them off, which is the best thing to do, but I didn't this time, and we're just not going to this time. This is where your tip is going to be, and that's usually the thing that fails on most weapons. So what we're going to do is first put some tape over it like this. So I'll fold it over like that, then I'll pinch in these sides here like that and wrap those over. It just makes it nice and clean if you do it that way. Alright, I'm going to go over with another piece. And I'll use probably 3 or 4 pieces like this. Straight down on top, lay it down, pinch in the 2 small sides, cover it with the 2 long sides. And I'm alternating these back and forth. You know, if I wrap it one way the first time, I'll wrap it another way the second time. So this will probably be the last piece I'll do like that. Okay. Down in the center, like so. Push down, there, 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 and then there. Alright, now we're going to start wrapping this core. So we'll start up here where we just did that, so it'll lock those pieces in this direction. We just want to get this as tight as possible. and try to overlap just at the end of it, just enough to get a little bit of an overlap. You want to try to conserve as much of this tape as you can. And this will wear out your fingers, I promise you. Get out of there. Alright, I'm going to put it on the ground and twist it like this.
I can cut this out.
So you'll just wrap this all the way down to about 32 inches, and you'll cut a little bit of it off, but all the way down to the bottom. That should be quite far enough right there. Okay, now your cord is ready for DAP. Got it wrapped up nice and tightly. Got another one over here I've already done. Just like that. This is what your cords look like. Make sure all this is down tight, give it a little roll around. And we'll be right back with the dapping process. Okay, now it's time to dap these pieces together. This is our core that we've just wrapped, and one set of our fries. So we're going to get our contact cement here, or wood dap. We're going to put, now 4 pounds soaks up a good bit, so I'm going to show you how much I typically put on there. So look right in here. I don't want to get it thick. I'm going to get it all inside there and all on the outside. Sometimes on 4 pound foam it takes 2 coats, so I'll put 1 coat on, let it dry for just a minute or 2, and then go ahead and put another coat on this. It's so absorbent. Make sure you get it in all the little cracks and crannies in there. Just using a piece of blue foam here to spread it with. That's what I typically use because it's handy and it works well. In there. Now you don't want to use an excessive amount of DAP because it won't dry and it won't adhere to itself really well if you do that. Right, so this one's dapped up pretty good. You can see there how quickly it's starting to dry out. Other side. I think 1 coat's going to be plenty on this one actually. Get it on pretty thick. Typically, you want the 2 sides, or the 3 sides in this case, would be this, the other piece like it, and the core to dry for 15 minutes before you try to stick them together. Now that time is dependent on the humidity outside and the temperature. If it's really cold outside, then it may not dry quite as quickly, and if it's really humid outside, it may not dry quite as quickly. If it's hot outside, it may dry a little quicker, but you want it to be only slightly tacky whenever you stick them together. You don't want it to be wet at all. Alright, now we're going to soup this up really good. All the way down. Make sure you get every bit of every surface. This is the base of your weapon. If it's going to come apart anywhere, it's going to be either the core or the tip. So this is one of the most important parts right here. It's also very important to make sure you get things routed out very well and everything fits together right, so that there's contact on all surfaces. There are other methods. People build it without the 4-pound box, without the 4-pound routed fries. They use a 3-pound box sometimes, or even a 4-pound box where they just cut the pieces out and glue them to it. But I really think this is superior because you get more surface area for all the pieces to bind to. This stuff's drying really quickly. It's even getting gummy on top of the surface of the DAP inside the can. There is getting gummy because it's drying so quickly. Stir it around a bit. Some of that wet stuff. Stuff doesn't really bind to skin or anything, so you don't have to worry about that. It just kind of makes a sticky spot and you peel it right off when it dries. Like rubber cement sort of. We're just going to go all the way down to the bottom because we will end up sticking other things to this eventually, even though the fries aren't going to go down this far. We'll be building a pommel onto it later, and the more layers of this stuff you have built up, I think the better, to an extent. Alright, so that's souped up pretty good. I'm going to stick this in the ground, let these things dry for about 10 minutes, and then we'll get back to sticking it all together. Okay, so we let it dry for about 15 minutes. All surfaces are just barely tacky, and that's what we want. Now, never try to stick these things together by standing them up like this, because what's going to happen is you're going to not get it on there straight. It's going to be twisted, and then you're going to have an issue with your whole sword. Your sword's going to be inferior, and it's going to be twisted, and it's going to wear out quickly. So what we want to do is leave about, I don't know, 6 to 8 inches at the top. You want to put your tip down first. Smush it right in there. Okay, and then you want to do this on a flat surface. And then looking down over the top, lay the whole thing down in there and give it a good press. Alright, on a flat surface, like I said, because this matters. This is what keeps your sword straight. Right, and from there, we'll bend this over the top. Always leave a piece to bend over the top, because this makes your tip really strong. Bend this over the top. Come down evenly, just like that. Stick that part. All right. Now that part's stuck, we're gonna take this other piece and measure it to right there, and we're gonna cut it. The reason we do it like this is because it overlaps and doesn't end up stuck in the same place. So we're gonna totally just did that anyway. All right, so stick this together right here like so. Now we're gonna have to cut this one in half now because I kind of flubbed that a little bit. I want to make sure we got enough on both sides. So take this guy, cut him in half. Honestly, this doesn't really matter that much as far as the integrity of the sword, because everything else is going around it. It's going to hold it all together as long as everything is straight. Alright, so we're going to lay that guy down there again on a flat surface. Put it in there nice and tight. This one on top, down nice and tight. Alright, now we've got our box built. We're going to take this, we're going to put it between two pieces of board here and clamp it. We're going to leave it clamped for about 20 minutes. We'll clamp one at the end here. On the edge, sorry, buddy. And on the edge over here. Clamp this in. Get it nice and even. Clamp that in pretty tight. And then over on this end, same thing. Snap it in. Center there. Alright, leave it squished in there pretty good for about 15 minutes, 15-20 minutes. While that's there, we can go ahead and get started on our blue foam. So we'll lay this out, and this is going to go immediately around the outside of the sword, gluing to the core that we've just built here. Now it's going to be 1 1/4 inches as well, but the difference in this material is it stretches and moves a lot. So we're going to have to make more reference points to make our straight line. So put this here, let me grab my Sharpie. This, make a lot of little reference lines at 1 1/4 inches all the way down this guy. 1 1/4 there. Keeping it flush to the edge over here. Make sure you make all these precise. 1 1/4 there. There. And 1/4 there. So now we've got all our lines marked for 1 strip. We're going to take this, as you can see, line it up on those marks. Get down tight. Good. Always when you're doing it, leave it overlapping the line that you just made somewhat so that you can make sure you're good and straight. Reference that line and the dot that you made. Nice big work surface is good too. You can do this on the floor, is a good space to do it. Not really great for your back, of course, but nice big long work space, really nice. All right, so we've got that. Let's sharpen up our blade again. Sun is brutal. All right, lay this out. Right down the line like we did before. This cuts a lot easier than the 4-pound. Again, you're keeping your blade in as down flat with as much contact as you possibly can with the foam, because that's more cutting surface doing the work. I really like a fillet knife for this job. A lot of people use a lot of different things, but I love my trusty old fillet. It really makes a nice cut. Okay, so this is 1 strip, and it'll probably take us 2, maybe 3 strips like this to cover the entire blade. As you can see, doing it that way, it's very uniform, which is really important to save you more work in the future, because if you don't get it very uniform, then whenever you get done, you'll have to grind the edges and make it all nice, which you may have to do anyways, but it's less work. All right, so we'll make a couple more of those, and then we'll get to gluing those together in just a few minutes. Okay, so it's been about 20 minutes. Take this guy out of here. It's sufficiently smooshed. Alright, that's our core thus far. And the next thing we're going to do is wrap these pieces of blue foam around like so. So it is sufficiently padded. Of course we're not wrapping like that, I'm just showing you there's going to be 2 layers there. Alright, so we're going to do that. Dap it all together, do the thing, and then we'll build our tips. Right, first thing we want to do is get some dap on this guy because it sits up a lot. I always like to stick it in the ground like that, it's just easier for me to work with. Actually, an angle like so. And come in. So. Sure it's covered good. This stuff does absorb a lot, like I said before. 4 pound, also known as 4 pound EVA. Anti-fatigue mat, whatever you want to call it. It's more durable than the blue foam, which is why we use it for our core wraps. There's a lot of different ways to do this. This is just the way the crows do it. Alright, so we've got that one sufficiently dapped up. One side of this. Putting a good amount of dap on there. You know, kind of thin it out with your piece of foam here. We'll make sure you get really good coverage. You don't want it puddled anywhere, but you want really good coverage. Could have cut these to size first. Just remember that each don't cut them all to a single size if you decide to cut them before you put them on there. Just cut one at a time, because with each wrap that you put on, the next wrap's going to have to be bigger to cover that wrap because of the circumference, or actually the radius of the sword face is growing as you add more material.
Oh my God.
Sometimes your neighbors sound like they want to beat somebody's ass. I don't know if y'all can hear her yelling over there, but welcome to Naomi Drive. Alright, I think that's sufficient. Let this dry for a few minutes. Again, probably 10-15 minutes, probably 15 minutes actually, because there's a lot of it on there. And we'll wrap that piece and we'll get on to the next piece. Okay, so this has been drying for about 15 minutes. Time to put on the first layer of blue foam. Everything is just barely tacky. That's how you want it. Nothing sticking, nothing pulling off like strings of dap. Alright, you take this piece. What you want to do is line it up exactly on the bottom. Stick it like this. Now while you're doing it, you got your fingers on both sides to make sure it stays exactly flush. All the way down. don't want to pull on it too much to stretch it. You want it to just go on naturally. If you stretch it, it makes your foam wear out faster, and it also compresses it and makes it hit harder. You go like this, all the way down, over the top, again not stretching it. I'm going to turn this over the top, holding fingers on both sides to make sure it stays uniform. And we'll compress it all on after we get it on there. Okay, and we're stuck to there. Now we're going to cut that little piece off, tag in. Alright, and give it a good squeeze. Now we're going to compress all this together in a few minutes on with the two boards and the clamps there. But we're going to put another layer of blue foam on first. So back in the ground with it. Boom. And glue on one side, on both sides of this all the way around. Tip real good. Make sure all bits are covered. Smush it in a little bit. See all these little crevices and stuff here. Not very deep, but you got to make sure that the DAP actually does get down into them. Right there. On the edges. All the way down. Right around. Nice and even, no puddles, just completely covered. This spot here I don't feel good about. It looks a little dry. Get it right in there. All right, now we'll get this piece over here, another one of these. And this is going to DAP directly around that, so we're going to do the inside here. Just like we did that piece when we put it on. Good coverage all the way down. Again, I reiterate, if you cut these beforehand, remember to leave this one a good bit longer than the other one, because it's got to wrap completely around both layers instead of just the one layer the first one had to wrap around. I usually just leave them long and then cut off the excess. It's not that much waste, and the pieces that are left over when you cut them off can be used for pommels, which we'll get to in a little while. Right, all the way down. Health advisory, don't do what I'm doing. Do this in southeast Alabama at the end of August. Midday. It's about 97 degrees out here right now. And I may indeed die of heat exhaustion before I make it through this tutorial.
And it takes like about 2 hours?
Yeah, I'd say 2-3 hours. Start to finish. Alright, complete coverage, and then we're just going to let these sit and dry again for about 15 minutes, and then we'll stick them together, and I'll show you how to build a stabbing tip. Alright, let it rest for 15 minutes and we'll stick them back together. Alright, 15 minutes are sitting. It's time to put the final layer of blue foam on. Pick it up, exact same way as we did before. Touch it at the base, keep your fingers on the outside to make sure on both sides that it stays exactly where it should be. Stick it in there. Over the top, turn it around. Don't compress it over the top, just let it fall evenly. No space, but don't compress it. All the way down and around, down to here. Alright, once we get here, find our handy dandy filleting knife. I'd made my filleting knife. Cut it right there. Pass this over to the side. These are going to be pommel pieces eventually. Alright, let's crush this all on there really good. And then we're going to put this back in our little vise system here. The 2 clamps. Ooh, those clamps are hot. They're in the sun for a couple hours.
Mm-hmm.
One on this end. Holding that good and tight. Gotta get to the center. That's where you want it. Alright. This one, open it up. Center of the boards. Get it down a little tighter. Now, if you don't have clamps and things like this, you can also use any kind of a weight. Weight in the board with a flat surface, as long as you can get it on there evenly. You want them to sit there. Now, typically, I do it for about 2 hours at this point, 2 to 3 hours. And let it sit in this vise. Now, today we're going to let it sit there for probably about 15 minutes because I'm going to go ahead and start building the stabby tip. I want this sword to get done because I'm giving it away this weekend. Alright, so one thing I failed to mention earlier is that for the stabby tips you're going to need yoga mat. I want you to look really close at this. This is really rubbery stuff. There's several different types of yoga mat, but this is the stuff you want. You can get it at Walmart. I think it's about 10 bucks. I don't really remember. But you get a whole roll of it, and it's more than you will ever use. I've had one roll for like 3 years now, and I've made a lot of weapons. It takes teensy little pieces to make the stabby tips. And I'll show you. This is the stuff. It's kind of corrugated on one side a little bit. Very rubbery. Very rubbery. Alright, so we're going to take one of these pieces we have here. We're just going to trace it to make us some pieces. And this is going to be the stabbing tip that goes over the end here. It goes over the end here so that so it's stab legal. I can find my pen. Alright, so you're going to want it there. Alright, we're going to get 2 pieces of this. Each sword gets 2 layers of this on the outside. Make this a line. And of course you want it basically 1 1/4 inches also, because that's what we're working with here for our sword overall. I do think that 20 minutes in this thing is sufficient. I don't think that's a skimp. I always just leave it for 2 hours just for surety's sake. We got these two pieces. They're going to end up on the ends right here and trimmed up. First, I'm going to go ahead and make them oversized like this, and we'll come back and trim them later. Trim them up so they'll be just the ends. So I'm going to cut them right here. Give them a little extra. Alright. And I'm going to dap both sides of one of these, the smallest one, and just one side of the other one. I usually put corrugated sides down on both of them. Everybody has their preferences. The corrugated sides to the inside. So this one's going to get dapped on both sides. This one's only going to get dapped on one side. We're going to let those sit for the 15 minutes we dap on them while this is curing in the vise. Which one's that? That's the inside. Okay. This stuff doesn't really absorb a lot, so you don't have to go overboard with it. Just make sure you get it all on there. Every bit of the surface is covered. All into those corrugations. Alright, it's nice and wet. We'll flip it over and do the other side. All into the corrugations. This makes it safe to stab people in the guts. Alright, this side, this one, like I said, is going to be the outside, so we're only going to do one side with the dap. Corrugated side down, so that's what we're doing here. Okay, let excess off of there, spread it out a little. Right, and we let these sit for 15 minutes while that's curing, and we will be back. Okay, it's been 20 minutes. We've had it in the vise here. We've got our 2 layers of blue foam on. We're going to take it out. We're going to add the steady tips. Steady tip. Angular. Alright, we got this guy. On the ground. Have the smaller one here with the dap on both sides, like we talked about earlier. What we want to do is find just about dead center of this. Put it right on there. So, like we did before, make sure we use our fingers on both sides. Don't compress it down. Just get it to stick. Top, underside, and this one, find also the center-ish. Stick it down, boom, like so. Alright, now once we've got this on there, I'm going to stick it down pretty good, a little pressure on it. Pressure is always good. Right, then we're going to lay this out like so. Take our handy dandy trusty dusty old knife here and our sharpened stone. We want to cut this off square with the edges of the blade itself. Typically I would wait a little while to do this and let this really cure in there. But today, I'm running out of time. I really want to get this thing built because I have other things I have to do today. I'm going to lay it down flush with that. Small even strokes all the way down. That. So on this side. Now we have our blade built. That's our blade with our stabbing tip. That's what we're looking for. We're going to end up cutting this off, adding tape to it, and put that out there, pommel, tape, and then build the handle. that's that for now, and we'll come back with some tape in a little while. I'll probably do that inside because it's hot out. So this is the tape we're going to use on the outside or on the blade. This is Scotch strapping tape. You can see the lines in it. This is reinforced with some fiberglass fibers. It makes it really strong, really resistant to breakage. So we're going to take a couple pieces here. It's super sticky, so use that in there. I'm going to take a piece over on this edge. Try to find about center, and again, you don't want to compress this end piece here. Just barely put it on there. Make sure that it really sticks to the sides over here and sticks down to this here. Alright, really want to compress that in like that to make sure you get good adhesion. Take another piece, just like that one. Edge over here, straight down. You kind of want to crisscross them like this. Again, not compressing. But squishing them really hard like that. Okay, and then from there, we're going to take long piece. You want it almost twice the size of the piece here. You want to go the entire length of it. Come back over here though. You'll have to go pan out. Alright, about twice the length of it. And you want to start it here. Pretty much symmetrically in the center. Again, not compressing. All the way down. Stick it at the top. Smush it really hard all the way down. Make sure it really sticks. Sometimes I'll even put weight on top of these, or put a board on top of them and stand on it to really squish that in there. Okay. Let off just a little below that so that I can wrap it over a little. We may come back in and square up these edges here, we'll see. We're just going to do it now. Square this up a little. Alright. Good enough. Top in there really good. And that'll make your tip last a really long time right there. Alright, so that's a blade that is completely built. Now you don't want anything on the outside here, only foam. Some people wrap over a little bit with a piece of tape right there. I don't do that, and I've never had any problems with it. And these will last you a long time. Now all we have to do now is build the pommel and the handle, the grip, and then we'll go into the sword cover itself. Alright, so what we're going to do for a pommel here is we're going to take the stuff that we've already made here come back to that pommel in just a minute. Okay, so the rule on a pommel is that it has to not be able to pass more than a ½ inch, or any surface other than the striking surface. Can't pass more than a ½ inch through a 2½ inch hole. So what we want to do, now this may stick together because I already have DAP on it, but typically you have a piece that isn't DAP. Let's see if we have it. There we go. Alright, so we'll take this and we're going to cut an angle on it like this. This is just going to make a smoother transition. Alright, so we'll roll it, giving the approximate size of the shaft here. I'll roll it like this. We're going to measure across like that. Actually, non-striking surface is a 2-inch hole. Can't pass through a 2-inch hole. So once we get this up and over 2 inches in all directions, there we go. It's good. All right, so I'm going to cut this at an angle again, but at this angle back to make that smooth transition. All right, this is going to be our pommel. It's going to wrap around that. So we're going to dap it on both sides, as well as where we're going to actually put it on here. So we'll get outside first. Same as before. Now where it's very porous right here, you may have to add a little extra DAP to actually get in those holes. It really matters. Nice, good coverage. Alright, that side's done, and we flip it. Try not to get it all over our fingers, or it usually happens anyways. Get this side completely covered. This guy outside to dry. We're going to take this here, and now at this point you want to look at your sword and decide where you want your pommel to be. You want to have a little extra space here, so you want your pommel to be maybe with your thumb in this position. A lot of people grip here, a lot of people grip here, which that's a bad grip, but that's a good grip that's often used. The size of your hand kind of dictates it, but typically I use my hand with my thumb up right there, and I start my pommel about almost an inch, maybe 3/4 of an inch below there. But this is already tacky and it's got some DAP on it. But we're going to add some more, just for the sake of surety. So again, just below, and DAP it all the way down to there. Now you could cut your sword off before you actually do this. I don't have my saw out currently, so I'm going to do it like this. Alright, and before you come back, I'll probably go ahead and cut that off just below where that pommel's going to be. But I'll do that off camera because it's loud, and I mean, you cut it with whatever you got. Cut it with a hacksaw, cut it with a sawzall, cut it with a skill saw, which I wouldn't recommend with all that DAP on it to get all of your tool. But anyways, that's where we are. We gotta let these things dry and then get that pommel wrap on there. We'll be right back. Okay, so I went ahead and cut that off flush, wrapped the end, put a little more DAP on there. we're going to get this flush to the end. Now when we're wrapping, we got to make sure that it stays flush to the end, it doesn't protrude as we twist it. Again, you don't want to compress because you've already measured it to about 2.5 inches. Excuse me, 2 inches plus a little. So this goes around like so. And just give it a good compression, like that. That one's a little wonky, so we're going to trim her down a little on these sides. The knife needs to be sharpened. Trim it down a little there. All this is going to get wrapped with tape. Alright, so I'll leave it right there. Okay, now we're going to make, for this one I'm going to make 3 discs that come out like this because I want to add a little counterweight to it. These things have to weigh 12 ounces for a blue sword. That's the Dagorhir rule. So, that being said, first we're going to cut off a piece of this blue foam. Make our 3 discs out of. Okay. Alright, we'll lay these out and trace this right on top of it. So we'll have exactly what we need. Maybe we get 2 out of this. Yeah, we'll get 2. Alright, so now you always want to put something here so that can't poke through that blue foam. I usually use quarters. It gives it a good solid surface. What we're going to do here is we're going to take 2 of these quarters together, put one of these on top of it, and do that twice. That'll give us a little bit of counterweight. Now for the quarters to be taped together, we're going to need little pieces of tape. Take 2, and like so. That one over, this over, this over. Tighten it down. Go ahead and get some DAP on this part. DAP here, and this is an end surface, so you see those pores are kind of hard to get it in there. Got to make sure there's plenty of it on there, a little bit more. Get in those holes there, leave that there to dry for a few minutes. Take this guy, DAP him on one side. That guy sit there for a minute. We'll cut out some of these. The best way to do this is probably with scissors, but I'm going to use this knife. That's what I have handy. Always watch out for your fingers when you're using sharp objects. I usually just kind of use it like a jigsaw. It does take a little practice if you're going to do it like this, so I recommend scissors really. Good pair of scissors cuts this very efficiently. And typically you could put a piece of 4-pound foam on top of here and 1 piece of this and you should be fine. This is only to protect yourself. I'm using these extra pieces because I like the counterbalance. It really makes your sword a better fighting sword that way. But it only cost about $1. My phone's doing weird stuff in my back pocket. Get a couple more of these quarters together here. Quarters in the very center. One corner. Other corner, then this corner, and then this corner. Push it all down the really tight way. Okay, there we go. And we're going to put a little dap on that. Let dry for a minute. Okay, I'm go ahead and dap 2 sides of this one. Make sure there's plenty of that. All the edges. Edges really matter on this, especially if you're putting quarters in there. Right there. 2 sides of this one. So I'm going to use that one for my cap because it's more round than the others. Two sides of this one here. Yes, right there. And we're going to do one side of this one. That's going to be the cap that goes on the top. Right, I think we'll do one more set of quarters. Hopefully this will come out right at 12 ounces and not much more. Made 8 of these swords just before the last day battle we had in town, and I didn't counterbalance them at all, and they all weighed under 12 ounces. So we had to, after we'd already built the pommels and everything, we had to weight the front end of them with, to weight the blade with duct tape to make them heavy enough. And that's not optimal at all, because you want your blade to balance just above the haft or just above the handle. And these were a little tip heavy, which makes them not fight as well. That was easy to wield. Okay, this one. course, ideally you'd be able to dap both sides of the quarters to begin with. We don't have that option because we're a little pressed for time. I would have done one side of the quarters, let it dry, do the other side of the quarters, and then carry on to this part. Okay, so now we're going to pause the video and come back, let this stuff dry for a few minutes, and then we'll be on to finishing up our pommel and working on our handle. Okay, so we have our DAP dried on all of these things, and I put there's DAP on both sides of our quarters now. So we're going to go about building it like this. This set of quarters right over that, and one of these over that, then another set of quarters over that, another one of these. Remember, we have the one end cap here that only has DAP on one side. So set of quarters there, set of quarters here. This is going to be a rather large pommel, but I really want this weight down here. Of course, you don't have to put 3 layers. You could put 2 layers if you like. And then this is our end cap. Once we get it on, we'll sandwich it all together. Smush it all down like that. Hold pressure on it for a minute. We're going to do it for about 30 seconds, and I'm going to put the tape on it after we cut it. Some good pressure on there. May try to separate a little bit, hopefully not. All right, then we're going to take it like this, and we're going to cut this down a little bit towards the edge like this to give it a taper. First on one side. We'll try to do it evenly on the other. Spin it. Spin it. Okay. And once we get all the tape on here, all this stuff here, you see there's some inconsistencies in our foam, but that's not going to matter much once we get it all taped in good. Which is what we're going to do presently. I'm going to go ahead and trim these edges off, make it a little more round. So many things you can do with pommel. This is just an easy peasy version. It's very effective. Alright, so we have that. It's going to be our pommel on this sword. Let's check the weight on that. That's pretty good. It's pretty good. We may have to add a little bit of weight to it somewhere. Once we get the handle and all in there, it should weigh out to at least 12 ounces. Okay, now we're back to our fabric tape. We're going to hold this betwixt our legs and our natural vise here. We're going to want this to go all the way over and down onto there. So we'll make this a nice long piece. So, in the center of it here, and you do want to compress this a little bit, but not a whole lot. Bring that down like so, and wrap it around this so that it holds. Alright, then we're going to go over the other way. Take the spurry bits off of here. Sticky furry bits. Alright. Again, another long piece. The reason we want it so long is so that it wraps over onto the handle, because all this is going to be wrapped in with more tape. One over this way. Down onto the handle, pulling it a little tight. Again, you don't want it super compressed, but those 3 layers will make it nice and squishy enough that it won't fail anywhere, and it's in good shape. And the twiddly bits. And you just cross over your initial cross. Down onto your shaft. Continue this until it's completely covered. Just hold one angle, buddy, one angle. Make sure that we go over both of the spots on both sides so that we're getting good coverage. Over that one, and this one. 2 more pieces of tape and we should have the end covered pretty good. It's also adding a little bit of weight to the end, which is a good thing. As long as you're using these materials, making a super heavy sword is not an issue in this one because these materials are pretty light. If you're new to the game, you're thinking about making PVC core weapons, just don't. They really are garbage and it's a waste of your time and your money when you can buy these materials as locally for as cheap. Alright, I'm going to roll all that in together like so. Take this, wrap it in here, which is going to give us a good tight feel for our pommel. Probably about as far as I'll go with that. Pommel's good and squishy. I'll take a couple of wraps around right here just to warm it up a bit. That's a good pommel right there. Good, it's solid, it's held together, squishy enough, it's not damaging, gives you good weight. Alright, so the next thing we're going to do is we're going to add some bits of rope or tape, either one, on probably use Gorilla Tape, to widen this out so that it's oblong, so that it fits in your hand better. And then we'll add our rope, then we'll be on to making a sword cover. But for all intents and purposes, that's your sword right there. Okay, so the next thing we're going to do is to just add some cordage in here, or actually I'll probably use Gorilla Tape, just something to build it out so that once we wrap our cord around it, it'll make our thing oblong this way, so that when you're holding it in your hand, you'll always know where your striking surface is. Alright, and we'll be back to do that in just a few minutes. Okay, so now we're going to take some of this Gorilla Tape. Actually, I think this is regular duct tape, but Gorilla Tape is what I typically use. We're going to make some pieces about this size. Make sure we get it right on top of this. Trim it down a little. What we're doing here is just building the handle out to make it a little more oblong. Okay, piece there. And you'll see what I'm doing here. I've got a just pulling a thin strip off like this, and it'll tear like that, and it'll carry on. Sizing it up, putting it on. It's 2 layers. Trying to count the layers here because I'm not sure how many I usually use. Not to mention, it's good to have it symmetrical on both sides. 3. 4, 5, 6, 7. I think we're gonna, let's give it a look, see what it looks like. Let's build it up a good bit on that side. We'll do 9 and then we'll go on the other side and do 9 as well. 8. 9. Alright, so we got 9 on that side, we're going to do 9 on this side. Two. 3. Try to hold still. 4. 5. My tripod's a little shaky. It's because it's my good son Braden here. He's kind enough to film for me. His ankles are getting eaten up by mosquitoes, so he's shifting back and forth. I don't know how he is dealing with it out here. 6. 7. 8. That's the sound of a squirrel eating a bone in a tree. That's totally what's happening. Sometimes a shaman has bones in the tree. 8.
Just eating it.
Does that because he gets calcium out of the bones. That's why when you find deer antlers in the woods, they're usually gnawed on by rodents. And 9. Alright, those on there, make sure they're oblongish. Alright, then we're going to get a wrap of this tape around it. Starting here. Try not to mess with that pommel too much. We really want it to set overnight in the position that it's in. That is a functional sword, but that is a tiny, tiny little handle. So what we're going to do is we're going to come back in and wrap it with rope to give you a better, well, I wouldn't say a better grip because that's pretty grippy, but more of a hand grip, more of a hand feel to it. And I like to use a bank line, which is a little smaller than paracord, feels nicer in the hand. So that's what we're going to use today, is bank line. But I'm going to first, foremost, put some DAP on this handle so that whenever we come back to put the bank line on, we'll already have one coat of DAP on there that's soaked in, and we can use another coat. So we'll go here with the DAP. Now I'll go see if I can find that bank line, and if not, we may be using paracord. We'll see. Dab off there. All right, let that dry for a few minutes. We'll be right back. Okay, so the difference here is this is paracord and this is bank line. Now I like the feel of bank line, but I think the paracord is going to give me a little extra girth, and that's really what I want on this handle because it's not for me. I like mine a little thinner, but most people don't. Most people like theirs a little more girth. We'll burn the ends off here. Try not to burn ourselves. Flatten that end out a little bit. Okay, I'm gonna put a little more DAP on this. You want it wet when we put this stuff on there. Because it kind of soaks into both of them and locks in there. I think, sir. A little more DAP on this guy. Remember, it's already got one layer from before, so I'm just kind of adding a little more. All the way up to there, down and over here. Alright, nice and wet and dappy. Okay, we're just going to start a wrap here. This is going to be bound in with tape when we're done wrapping it. Hold it in place till we get around. Wrap over the one we just did first, and then wrap back. Keeping it pretty tight. After you get the first couple wraps on, you can tighten down on it a little bit. See that DAP squishing through there, that's a good thing. And keep it really tight to the one next to it. Oop, and you don't want to do that. You can also do some really fancy work here if you like to tie fancy knot work, which I intend to get into very soon to make some pretty lure weapons. This is just a basic blue, Pro-Tech blue with stabby tip. Alright, we're getting close to the end here. Tighten that in. Really tight. Okay. Maybe we can set it on fire without lighting off this dap. That'd be great, eh? Move it away from that foam a little bit. Melt it a little bit. And around. Right off there. Alright, and we're going to go in with a little bit of this in the opposite direction that we wrapped. A couple of rounds of tape. Alright, this one. Opposite direction on this one. That's two. And you have a finished sword. Feels good in the hand. Weighs out right. And the only thing left to do is to make the sword cover. That's going to be a different video. I'm done for today. Sword cover is basically just a simple bag that you make tight with this, make it a little longer with a drawstring. That's how you build a blue sword. None of that garbage with the PVC. All this is locally sourced. And you see you got a lot of material left over to make plenty of other swords and equipment.